I feel that it's very dark in this room that I'm in. Should I try to change something in the lighting?
There, that looks good now.
Excellent. I didn't do anything, just focus.
Good morning. My name is Rachel Nelson, and I'm the Director of Educational Initiatives and Associate Director of Community Relations at the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland. The last 7 weeks have been so challenging for all of us, and especially for our brothers and sisters in Israel, who have been so traumatized since the horrific Hamas attacks in Israel. Some of the work at the Jewish Federation of Greater Portland has done here in Portland in support of Israel. I want to share some of that. On October 9th, we held a solidarity gathering at the congregation Neve Shalom, where 1,200 community members joined us in person, and another 1,800 streamed the gathering. We've had 2 webinars since then, one with an IDF spokesperson and a survivor of the Nova Music Festival, and with Herb Kanan, a journalist from the Jerusalem Post. We will have these weekly Wednesday Israel-focused webinars through at least mid-January. You can check our website for further details. Last night, we held a vigil for the hostages. We are so relieved that 85 hostages to date have been released and are hopeful for more to be released in the coming days. Our Israel Emergency Campaign has raised over $2 million, funds going directly to Israel for rebuilding and trauma care. We've also been working with our local Israeli community to make sure that those who have family members in Gaza are sharing those stories with the media and they remain in the public eye. We are working hard to ensure that our Jewish students in public and private schools and university campuses are feeling safe. We're doing our best to counter the anti-Semitism that has been spiking since the October 7th attack. Also, we are encouraging everyone to make calls to your members of Congress. They need to hear from us. They need to know that we expect and urge them to remain steadfast with their support for Israel. I can assure you they are hearing from the other side, and we need to make sure their early support stays strong for Israel. Finally, we've also created a hub of all things related to Israel on our website and the war for you to follow up with. You can find that on our website, and we'll share that link in the chat. So while our presentation is happening, the chat has been disabled, but please use the Q&A feature at the bottom to submit questions. This session is recording and will be available on our website. So I'd like to introduce our speakers and our organization today. Dror Israel is a grassroots organization of 1,300 trained educators living in 15 intentional communities through Israel's social and geographic periphery. Through their schools for youth at risk, youth movement, and local national programming, they better the lives of over 100,000 Israelis annually. Living in the neighborhoods they serve, they quickly assess needs, identify problems, and create initiatives to solve them. Dror Israel has an extensive and successful track record in emergency response. During the wars and military operations of the past years, they operated daycares and shelters, community programs, camps, and trips outside of the firing zone and more for children under attack, as well as similar operations in Poland and in Israel in response to the Ukraine war. Since the beginning of the current war, Dror Israel educators established emergency schools, kindergartens, and youth programs all over the country, serving tens of thousands of evacuees from the Gaza envelope and from the northern border each week and adapting to the changing needs on the ground. And Portland is a strong and proud supporter of the work that Dror Israel is doing. So I'll introduce our first speaker. Noam Schlanger is an educator, group facilitator, and Dror Israel's liaison to the Pacific Northwest region of the US and Canada. Noam began his career as a youth counselor, working with at-risk teenagers in several centers in northern Israel, including the Arab Israeli village of Kfar Manda. He was responsible for creating a nationwide network of student-led cooperatives in Israel's education system, bringing climate awareness and sustainability programs and arts and sports workshops to schools across the country. For the last 4 years, Noam has lived in Dror's urban kibbutz in the mixed Arab-Jewish city of Akko. He is responsible for the neighborhood's community garden, a social and learning center for elderly Russian-speaking residents. In North America, he works with partners like us and supporters to spread the message of Dror Israel's mission. So I'm now going to turn it over to Noam to present our following speakers. Welcome, Noam.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Rachel, so much, and I'm glad to be here. I feel personally blessed to know some of you in Portland and to have met members from the amazing community. Portland is one of our earliest connections in the States, and it is very meaningful to us to know that you have our backs and that you care and you support in whatever way you can. So first of all, a huge thank you from me and from us as an organization. So you said a couple of words about Dror Israel. We have experience in dealing with these kind of emergencies. So at the day, the 7th of October, when this horrific attack started, it took us not a lot of time to kind of plan ahead and see what we can do with our tools and knowledge, which is mainly education, taking care of people, whether they are young, children, kindergartens, adults, retirees, whatever. So it took us not a lot of time to figure out our plan of action, which meant sending people, sending Dror Israel members who are all trained educators all over Israel to wherever they're needed the most. Some of them went to Eilat, to the Dead Sea. We're going to hear Carmi, who is still currently in the Dead Sea, for periods of from 1 week to 2 months, 1 month and a half since the war started. It's a hard time here. I suppose some of you have friends and families in Israel, and you hear and you know the feelings and the public feelings, and I think this sense of a great catastrophe that has happened to us and a great uncertainty on our future. And I think I don't have any brilliant political solution. I wish I would, but I don't. I do think that doing this kind of work on the ground, meeting the actual people, taking care of them in whatever way we can, it brings a sense into life. In a way, it eases the pain of some people, and it helps those who survived the horrific attacks to continue on and to build their lives, even if it's shrouded with uncertainty currently. So our first speaker would be Carmi. I'll say a few words about her. Carmi is an amazing educator. She's modest, so she won't say it, but she's an amazing educator. She made Aliyah from Vancouver quite a while ago. And she is currently in a hotel in the Dead Sea, working with the people that were evacuated from Sderot. And Carmi herself lived in Sderot for the past years. So she's evacuated from Sderot as well with her baby daughter and her partner. So Carmi, feel free to tell your story, and afterwards there will be time to ask Carmi some questions. After her, Daniel will speak. So Carmi, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Like Noah mentioned, I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada, and I made Aliyah and moved to Israel about 12 years ago. I was looking to do meaningful work in Israeli society, and I guess you could say I found a second home in Dror Israel. And since then, I've been working and living as a part of an urban educators community, or kibbutz, of Dror Israel. And for the last 7 years, I've been living in this urban kibbutz in the city of Sderot, just a couple miles away from the Gaza Strip. And what I've been doing I guess I'll say a little bit about what I do, because it's connected to what I'm doing right now during this war, as well as tell a little bit about October 7th and how it met us, how it met me in my home in Sderot. So for the last 7 years, my friends and I at Dror Israel, we've been working in some of the most underserved neighborhoods in the city of Sderot. And what we're doing is, our goal basically of these activities in the neighborhoods is to develop a strong local leadership. And the strong local leadership with a focus on making all sorts of positive change in different areas of the residents' life, like if it has to do with public safety or education or just the healthcare system. And it's working from the ground up, working with residents to answer the needs that they have, together as individuals and as groups. And I'll just say a part of what we do is we've established a network of, we like to call them neighborhood activists. We have over 600 neighborhood activists who during times of military operations and times that we call in Stero quiet times, that these residents have chosen to take responsibility for themselves as well as for their neighbors, whether it be people that live in the same public housing complex as they do, or on their street, or even just the apartment floor. They go and they check and make sure everybody's okay, and they're sort of like an address that people can come to if they need help in all sorts of issues in their life. And it's important for me to say what we did before for the last 7 years, because it has enabled us to do what we're doing now in the Dead Sea with these residents from Sderot that we all have been evacuated. So I guess I'll say a little bit about how that Saturday, October 7th, went for us. I was at home. All of us at Dror Israel, the educators, we live in an apartment building together, as well as with other residents of Sderot. And I happened to be alone that weekend with my baby daughter, who just turned 9 months old. At the time, she was 8 months. And it was a holiday, so a lot of our friends from Dror Israel weren't there. It was Simchat Torah. And a lot of them were different places around the country. So there weren't that many of us. And like I said, I was alone with my daughter. And that Saturday morning, I got woken up by a siren. And I was asleep with my daughter in the safe room of our house, which isn't a coincidence that the safe room was also our bedroom, her bedroom. And when the siren went off, she was with me, and she was sleeping, so I wanted her to keep sleeping. So I quickly and quietly got out of bed and closed the door of our safe room, and got back in bed, and immediately went to my phone to text my partner and some friends to say that there's sirens, but we're okay. We're in the safe room, and we'll just wait it out. And I started to realize that this maybe wasn't like a usual, if you can call it, a usual day of sirens, in that there were sirens all over the country. And at that point, I started to think, okay, maybe something is going on here. And for the next half hour, there were, if I remember correctly, there were many more sirens, and at that point, I started to get some messages from friends, one friend in particular, asking if my door was locked, the door of our apartment. And that's something that people don't usually ask. And so I told him that the door's locked and we're in the safe room. And he texted me saying that he saw videos of terrorists, of Hamas terrorists in Sderot, in our neighborhood, and that I need to stay inside. And that's something that I've never experienced before, of course. And I remember thinking, and I remember writing to him that it must be fake, that it can't be true. And he wrote me back that no, that it's true, and that it's going to be a mess outside for a little while, and that I need to stay inside. And at that point, I even thought, okay, if it's not fake, then there's already videos of it, and my friend in Haifa has seen the video, then the IDF or the police must have already stopped it. And I wrote that to him, and he said, nope, it's still going on, and you need to stay inside. And I can say that sirens, as weird as it sounds, sirens, of course, it's a scary situation, but it's a situation that I feel like I know what to do. A siren caught me outside, 8 months pregnant, and I knew what to do to protect myself as best as I could. But so sirens, I felt like, okay, we're in the safe room. I can manage that. But terrorists outside, I didn't know what to do. Nobody ever told me what to do when there's terrorists outside. At that point, my partner, who was away for the weekend, got in touch with me, and he told me that what I needed to do was to leave the safe room, leave my daughter in the safe room, and go outside into the apartment quickly and pull down all of the electric blinds that we have all over the house, and to make sure all the windows and the doors are locked. So that's what I did. My daughter, at this point, she was still sleeping, which I have no idea how that happened, but I guess she understood that she needed to stay asleep. And that's what I did. We went and I locked everything. And at a certain point, I went right back into the safe room, and we were there for the next 36 hours. And throughout the day, there were more sirens, as well as early in the morning, I also started to hear gunshots outside, and it became clear that there was an exchange of fire with terrorists outside of our building. We became aware that terrorists had entered the apartment building next to ours, and there were pictures of them inside. Like I said, I was alone in the safe room, and usually, if it was a usual day of sirens, then some friends from other friends would come and be with me in the safe room. But because we were afraid that terrorists could be in the stairwell, we decided that everybody just needed to stay in their apartments locked. At a certain point during the day, we also became aware that neighbors of ours in the building, they had decided to leave with their 2 young daughters at the first siren. And unfortunately, they were stopped by the entrance of Sderot by a group of terrorists, and this young couple was murdered. And luckily, their 2 daughters were saved. But all of this is we're piecing all of this together during those afternoon hours on Saturday, as well as I was in touch with the neighborhood activists, because they're in all different neighborhoods. Together, we were trying to understand what was happening and to make sure everybody was as okay as they could be. And together, we were piecing together the story of what was happening to our city, to Sderot. That night, there was a lot of sirens and a lot of loud boom noises from Gaza. And say that I didn't sleep. Somehow my daughter Neve had one of her best nights of sleep, but I was up most of the night, texting with people, trying to understand what was happening, and just trying to stay as calm as I could. I guess I'll jump to Sunday. That again, there were sirens. At a certain point, towards in the afternoon, there was a break of a couple hours of sirens. And at that point, we decided that my partner and I decided that I should try and leave Sderot with my daughter. And we became aware that there's an organization of retired military reservists with weapons that were offering to come and accompany people out of their homes. So we got in touch with them, and they said if we could be ready in the next 15 minutes, then we could go. So I packed whatever I could in 15 minutes, and myself, my baby daughter, and 3 other friends. We met them outside. 6 wonderful individuals that were ready to come and take us out of Sderot with 2 cars. We drove in a car, and they drove 2 cars accompanying us out. You can say in that 15 minutes, I suddenly had to decide what to do with my daughter, if I should put her in her car seat or not. And the idea, my thought was, if by chance we were to meet terrorists along the way, what would be the safest thing to do with her if that was going to happen? So I called my partner, and together we decided that during the trip out of Sderot, I would hold my daughter on my lap. And if need be, I could place her on the floor of the car and could lie on her. And had to make that decision in those couple minutes. And we went down from the building, like I said, and these men met us there. And the drive out of Sderot, it was about a 10-minute drive, but it was I've said this, I've never been in a war zone or anything like that, and I hope I never will have to do anything close to that again. But I guess that's what we saw. There was there were many cars that were abandoned in the middle of the road with all the doors open, broken glass, blood on the ground. And fortunately, we got out safely, and I met my partner in the center in Tel Aviv. We were there for a couple of days, and then we decided to come to the Dead Sea. And I'll just give a few words about what we're doing now in the Dead Sea. Like I said, we've been working this past 7 years with these neighborhood activists, and we decided to come to the Dead Sea because in those couple of days we did tons of phone calls, and we understood that many of our neighborhood activists had been evacuated to the Dead Sea. So we wanted to come to be with them. And at the Dead Sea, there's also different kibbutzim that have been evacuated. I can say when I first got here, I noticed right away the difference between a kibbutz that was evacuated and the residents of Sderot. In the sense that a kibbutz is an organized body of people, and they're already split up into, let's say, different committees. Different people take responsibility for the education or the security, or even there's people that are responsible for celebrating birthdays. And that's much different than the city, that's very different than the city of Sderot, over 30,000 people that were evacuated at random, not according to neighborhoods or to apartment buildings or to friends or family even. And we saw that difference when we came, that it was pure chaos. And what we decided to do was, with our neighborhood activists, to establish something that we call leadership committees. And that there's a leadership committee of residents in each hotel. And these leadership committees we have many different goals for them. And what they try to do is to take responsibility for what's happening in the hotel from the ground up, like we're used to doing in Sderot, in the sense that the residents themselves are the ones to dictate what their needs are and what help they need, as well as what help they want to get. I can give an example or so that a picture, there's a leadership committee in one of our hotels of residents. An example, I guess, is that there's many different types of volunteers that have been coming to the Dead Sea to help. All sorts of really great people who want to just do and are doing really great things for the residents of Sderot. And what we wanted to do was for the residents to dictate what they needed and for them to work directly with the volunteers. And a story that I like to say was one of the first things that one of the leadership committees decided to do was they decided to put chairs on each floor of the apartment, in each floor of the hotel building. And that's because in this hotel, it was one of the first hotels that Sderot residents were evacuated to. And most of the residents there are elderly senior citizens. And these residents on the leadership committees, they understood that you can wait in this hotel something like 10 minutes just to get on the elevator to come down to go to the cafeteria to eat. And what they noticed was that these elderly residents were waiting 10-15 minutes and they weren't able to. They needed a place to sit. And this is something that these leadership committees and these residents themselves a need that they were able to identify, because they themselves live on the 17th floor and they see these residents, the elderly residents, struggling. And that's something that a volunteer who comes in the morning and wants to do nothing but good, they don't necessarily have the ability to identify that need and then to answer it. But these residents themselves, they know that, and they were able to do that. Another example of a work that we did with the residents right off the bat was to put some order to the donations that they were receiving. That at the beginning, and even now, there's people that come and bring all sorts of toys, clothes, anything that you could need to the different hotels. And at the beginning, it was a pretty bad situation in the sense that there were residents getting into physical fights over the allocation of these different donations. And these leadership committees, one of the first things that each one did was they established people that were responsible for taking in the donations and then allocating the donations to every single individual who needed it. So that there wasn't this stress of I'm not going to get enough if I'm not the first one there, then I won't get what I need. Rather, there's this leadership committee that is here that's ready to care for me and to make sure that what I need I get, and I don't have to sort of fight for it. I could say that today was it was a pretty amazing day in the sense that we had a conference for the 7 different leadership committees that we have in the Dead Sea. We invited them all to a conference. Everybody got a name tag, and the idea was to get everybody together because they don't know each other. They're all spread out of the Dead Sea in all these different hotels. get all the leadership committees together to talk about what they've done, what they've succeeded in, to share maybe in some struggles or challenges that they've had. And also just to see each other, to understand that there's other people there that are doing, other people here that are doing the same things that they are, and that they can try and also get a little bit more strength to continue on for another month or however long we're going to be here for. And I can say that it was a pretty amazing experience today to sit in this room, in this conference room full of mostly women who were trying to take responsibility for these new communities that they're establishing in each hotel. One of the women got up to speak, and she's a woman that I know from Sderot, from our activities in Sderot before the war. And she spoke, and she said that she's a newly divorced mom of 3 young kids. And she told us a bit about how it was for her to leave Sderot with almost nothing. And she was quite afraid. She didn't know where she was going, who she was going to meet there, and for how long she was going to be there for. And around the 2nd or 3rd day that she was here at the Dead Sea, she understood that we were trying to get together residents to start this leadership committee, and she was one of the first people who wanted to be a part of it. And she told us in her speech today that she felt like she found herself again. That after such a hard couple of days at the beginning of the war, coming here and understanding that she can not only take responsibility over herself and her daughters, but look at the larger community and see what she can do to help others. She said it gave her a reason to go out of her room in the hotel each morning. And she said that now, if you see her, she's wherever there's a problem, because she has to be the one that has to help solve the problem. And I think that gives a good example of of another goal of what we're trying to do here, is to allow people a little bit of independence and a little bit to strengthen their agency in this time of uncertainty, that they can take responsibility for themselves and for their community, their neighbors. And by doing that, I think it strengthens them as an individual. It strengthens their individual resilience, and it strengthens their social resilience as a community. And I can say that we're still here at the Dead Sea, and we're planning to be here, from what we know, for at least until the end of December. Who knows, maybe longer. And our plan is to stay and to keep working together with residents, trying to make this chaotic time a little bit better for everyone. I think that's it for now, Noah.
Thank you so much, Carmi. Is there any questions from the crowd? Carmi could answer them directly.
So I can actually start with a few questions that I have. Carmi, I can't even imagine. I have 3 young kids as well. So to hear your story of being in the safe room, it's harrowing. So thank you for sharing it. You mentioned the neighborhood activists. How is that translated during the evacuation? Are they all in the same hotel? How are they translating their work from what they were doing in Sderot to what they're doing in the Dead Sea hotels?
That's a good question. So for the couple of days before we decided to come to the Dead Sea, what we tried to do is we just tried to call more than 600 people, and we tried to call the neighborhood activists to understand where they are. And a lot of them were spread out all over. They're in Eilat, in the Dead Sea, some even in Haifa, Netanya, Jerusalem, and some different family members all over the country. The cities that I mentioned earlier are hotels that the city of Sderot evacuated them to. And we decided to come to the Dead Sea because in the beginning, that's where most of them were. Right now, at the peak time, I think there are around 4,000 Sderot residents here. Today, I'm not so sure. Many people have decided to leave or to go back to Sderot even, or into different places. And in terms of the second part of the question, I think that that the sort of the principles of our activities, whether it's in wartime or military operation or just a regular period of time, they stayed the same, in the sense that that the residents themselves are the ones that say what they need, And we help them together as a group or as individuals to try and answer those needs together. So the needs were a little bit different, right? When people came here, they needed things like shampoo or formula. Even when we were still in Sderot for those couple of days, people were afraid to leave their houses and they needed formula for their kids. And we tried together to understand how we can get them in, how a neighbor can come and help them. And during those, I can say maybe one example, during those first 48 hours, we became aware of a family that 5 kids, the oldest one being a 17-year-old, and the mom had left them for the weekend, something that she did sometimes. And they were alone in the house on the 7th of October. And what we were able to do with the mom's help is turn to a different neighborhood activist that lived nearby. And they decided to basically endanger themselves, leave their apartment, and go sit in the safe room with these 5 kids. And they did sort of turns every couple of hours. Another person would come and another person would go. So that's during the time in Sderot. And here it's, I'd say, less stressful and less dangerous, but the same sort of principle of looking out and caring for one another and sort of being the eyes on the ground to see who they can help and how they can help. That answered.
Absolutely. It's got to be so wearing being in a hotel now going on 7 weeks. How is the community feeling? What is the mood of the community? What's happening with the kids? What are they doing during this time? And this is a lot of questions at once. Are folks going back to work? Are they working remotely?
Okay. I can say that the first couple of weeks, everybody was in shock. And there were tons of activities, many different volunteers coming, anything from different sort of workshops, like a bubble blowing workshop or a different type of dance that you can quickly go to the lobby and do. And that sort of died down a bit. And a couple of weeks ago, we got another message saying from the municipality saying we were going to be here for another month. And I can say that those 2 days were pretty rough and that the general feeling was it was very low. And in the leadership committee that I lead, I just asked them, what do you think we need to do right now? What should we do in order to help people? And one of the first things they said was they needed it to feel more like home. And that for the last couple of weeks, they were trying to just be on a vacation. Mm-hmm. And now they understand that it's their home. And so one of the first things they did was these women said, we need to get into the hotel kitchen and make Friday night dinner for everyone. And that's what they did. And for the last 3 weeks, the leadership committee in this one hotel has been making their famous Moroccan fish Friday night dinner because they said we need to feel a little bit more like home. As weird as that can be, and as home as this can be, that's what they were doing. The kids have been now most of them go to different educational frameworks that have been set up either by the city of Sderot, which some of them, Dror Israel, we have educators there helping set them up. That there's just different, in different lobbies all around the Dead Sea. In the morning hours, there's school for kids. And in terms of the adults, now that the kids are in school, the adults are a little bit more free and they're trying to understand what to do. A lot of them don't necessarily want to work right now. Because if they start to do a different type of work right now, they actually lose government benefits that they're getting. And so right now, as the leadership committees were acting, that's one of the biggest things we're trying to figure out what to do, is what should we together suggest for them to do. So there's some that are starting to learn English together, that they said that now is a time where they can start to learn things that they've always wanted to learn, but they can't do it. So we're trying to, that's a need right now that the leadership committees are addressing. But the adults that necessarily don't want to work because they don't want to lose these benefits, but also have to do something in order to pass the time in a good way.
What about you? How are you feeling? Are you planning to go back to Sderot afterwards? What are your thoughts?
It's a good question. And I think to be quite honest, I'm not sure. I think that I want to understand a little bit more about what the situation is that I would be going back to. And I want to make a decision also with my friends from Dror Israel, that I live there with other people and we do something together as a community. And I want us to understand together what sort of life we can imagine there before before committing to anything.
And before we switch, Noam introduces Daniel. One more question. What's bringing you hope right now? What's providing a little bit of hope?
That's a great question. I think today was pretty special. This conference that we did with all these different. It was just a room full of. There were some men, but there was a room full of women. That they almost all of them are mothers, and I just have one kid, and they're here with 5, 6, and they managed to do so much and to think about other people all the time. And I think it was really special and a really meaningful day just to be around so many people that it gives you a lot of strength to see other people being able to give from themselves and to think about others and just to want it to be really good for other people. So I think working with these women gives me a lot of strength.
Thank you, Carmi. Thank you so much. We'll pass it back to Noam to introduce Daniel.
All right, so thank you, Carmi. Our next speaker will be Daniel. Daniel spent a couple of weeks establishing a kindergarten for kids evacuated from Kibbutz Erez to Mitzpe Ramon. We have a thriving Dror Israel community in Mitzpe Ramon, and I don't know if any of you have ever been, but it's a very, very small and distant town. It more than doubled its size during these last month and a half. It filled with evacuees, basically, and in many, many ways, we had to accommodate their needs and think about how can we answer their needs. I'll just say a quick thing about our work in the Dead Sea. Apart from the leadership committees that we have in the hotels that Carmi is running, we have a lot of youth and children activities, providing daycares for them, school. I mean, we had a school basically running, makeshift school that we made, and rebuilding the kindergartens for the Be'eri, which is a kibbutz that got hit really hard in the massacre. So all that's going on together with the leadership committees. So Daniel, please tell us about your story and your work.
Hi. My name is Daniel Crook. I'm Australian originally. I've been in Israel for 11 years now. Most of that time I've been in Tel Aviv, but prior to Tel Aviv I was in Haifa. And I'm currently a member of a Dror Israel educators kibbutz in Tel Aviv. In my day-to-day, I'm a kindergarten teacher in a kindergarten that is run by the Dror Israel school network. And on October 7th, I think we'll start there. It's an appropriate place to start. I was actually in Australia. I was visiting my family. I had not been there for many years on account of Corona and very limited opportunity for air travel. And I just gotten back from lunch with my 2 sisters and my mum when I looked at my phone and I saw that my friends in Tel Aviv had woken up as well to sirens and that they were messaging each other on our group chat. Immediately I opened the news. I tried to read and understand what was going on. And as reality unfolded, I understood more and more about the horrors of what was going on at home. And to the absolute dismay of my mum, I told her I need to get on a flight and get back home. I felt that it wasn't right to be so far away from where I've been building my life for the past decade and far away from my friends, and that this is where I needed to be. So without knowing whether I would make it back or not, I boarded a flight and I luckily made it back home to Tel Aviv by the morning of the 8th of October. On the way, I stopped in Dubai and there were hundreds of Israelis stranded with canceled flights. So I was very lucky to get back. Within a few days, I found myself on my way to Mitzpe Ramon. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a kindergarten teacher in my day-to-day in a beautiful kindergarten in Rishon LeZion, a short drive from here. And I found myself on my way to Mitzpe Ramon to meet with a community, a kibbutz who had been evacuated to there from Kibbutz Erez. Kibbutz Erez is a kibbutz on the northern border with Gaza, very, very close to the border. Luckily, what they experienced on October 7th, together with a lot of fear and uncertainty, was that they were able to hold the terrorists outside of the kibbutz. And as a result, only one member of the kibbutz was murdered on the kibbutz. And there are no hostages from that kibbutz. However, each kibbutz member knows tens, if not hundreds, of people from the area who did lose their lives that day or were taken hostage. I found myself arriving in Mitzpe Ramon. I walked into this old, dirty, dusty room as a program room in the hostel that they were staying in. And I understood the task that was before me. I was, at that moment, the only one in the room, and I had to, in the space of a few hours before the next morning, turn it into a kindergarten. And I started working, I started sweeping and clearing the room out, and slowly, over the next 2-3 hours, countless kibbutz members walked into the room and said, what can we do? How can we help? And together we turned that room into a makeshift kindergarten, together with the help of the kibbutz members and with a lot of donations. And what you're about to see, this photo is the initial setup of the kindergarten. As you can see, it's very basic. There was no furniture yet in the kindergarten, but the spirit of the kindergarten was there from day one, in that we provided a space for young children, 3 to 6 years old, to come and have fun and be children together, to laugh, to play, and to not experience the stresses themselves that their parents are obviously experiencing. A child doesn't have the capacity to understand, or less of a capacity to understand the like reality around them, especially in times of turbulence and stress and change. And this kindergarten gave them the place just to focus on what they know to do, which is to be children. And it was really beautiful and filled me with a lot of joy and hope to see these children and to spend each morning and afternoon with them. And obviously, it was also incredibly important for their parents. The parents had this, after the kindergarten, I think, opened 6 days after October 7th. So for those 5 days, they're with their kids 24/7. And suddenly the parents have the opportunity to leave their kids in loving and caring hands and go worry about their lives that have been turned on its head. A few hours of respite from the demands of parenting to figure out the huge challenges that their lives are now faced with. Some of the first things that I did when I got there was I created a schedule, and I wrote it in big on the whiteboard. What is the schedule for the kindergarten? We're going to have an opening circle at this time. Then there's free play, and then I'm going to eat fruit, and there's going to be someone that's going to come in to run a music class or a sports class. So I wrote this schedule up, and every single adult figure that walked into the kindergarten immediately took a photo of the schedule. And I think for me, it was very symbolic of what this kindergarten was offering them a sense of routine, and offering them a sense of stability. To see a schedule in front of you when there's no clarity in your life, I think filled them just with a lot of strength to know that at least their kids are in the place that they need to be in. So that was move one. I met in the first 2 days with all of the parents and had a conversation with all of the parents about their children and about what they experienced on October 7th, about the wider family and what the needs are. How many kids are they in the single room in the hotel? Just to try and get a grasp on what I needed to be doing with these kids on a content level, and obviously as well on an emotional level. On the content level, I decided we're not going to talk at all about what's going on around them in terms of the fear. We're not going to focus in any sense on the scary reality. We're going to give them a break from that and focus on fun and interesting and childish things. We found ourselves in Mitzvah Ramon, so it was only obvious to talk about the desert, which we did. We spoke about dunes and sand, and we looked at the different desert animals that live around Mitzvah Ramon. And every morning they would arrive and they would tell me, yesterday after kindergarten, I saw this animal or this animal. So we focused on things that allowed them to move their minds elsewhere. But obviously the children process what they experienced in other ways, maybe less so verbally, but what they experienced on October 7th was very present in their play, in the games that they would play. And just to share one example, few mornings in a row, a group of kids would built a building with some blocks, built a fence around this building, and then they put what they called the good dinosaurs inside and the bad dinosaurs outside, and the good dinosaurs had to stop the bad dinosaurs from getting in, which is just a scarily accurate metaphor for what they and their families experienced on October 7th. And very quickly, I understood that I'm an educator. I have a lot of experience in early childhood education, but I am not a mental health professional. And my ability to understand on I don't know, the emotional, the mental health side of things, to understand what these children need is very limited. And I felt that I don't have the necessary tools. So I contacted a woman who lives in Ra'anana, I believe, who's a child psychologist, and she has developed a program that is titled something like what to do when it's hard for me or when I'm having a hard time, in which she explores number one, recognizing your emotions, or children recognizing their emotions, and then deciding what tools they have in order to deal with them through animals and through play. And so I invited her, and she spent a day with me and with the children and going through this tochnit and teaching me. I had to learn very quickly what to look out for and what to provide, and when to use what are the tools that she was providing. But I think it was extremely significant to reach out. And the last thing, or one of the last things I'll say, is about the choice of the kibbutz members to move to Mitzvah Ramon under the circumstances that they did, to be refugees in their own country. and immediately after arriving in this new place, to immediately think about education and what educational systems are going to exist for their kids. I think that choice is, number one, not an obvious one, and number two, I found very inspiring and a huge sign of resilience from this kibbutz. The fact that they could get there and, before many other things, think about their children and creating and establishing structures for them to be in. And I was involved in the kindergarten, but Dror Israel was involved in a whole lot of other projects during my time in Mitzvah Ramon, including school programs for younger kids and up to the end of high school, as well as evening activities for them. Mitzvah Ramon is also extremely isolated, and there's only one major supermarket in the entire town. And over those few days, the town went from having 5,000 residents that live there in general to having an influx of 2,500 more. And food was in very low supply. And Dror Israel members were involved in getting more food into the town, as well as taking over a kitchen and just cooking food en masse and inviting any of the evacuated residents from the Gaza envelope to come there and eat. And I think the final thing that I'll say is that I know what we did and what we created for the children of kibbutz areas was invaluable and special and inspiring and important. But they are 300 of the 2,500 evacuees in Mitzvah Ramon, and it only hurts knowing that I wasn't able to bring every kid into a kindergarten during the time that I was there, and that those kids had something beautiful, but it pains me that we weren't able to offer that for all the kids, and sadly, it is or it was on organizations such as our own to provide those answers, and in these weeks it was less on the Ministry of Education. So I'm happy we did what we did. It was important, and eventually we found a permanent kindergarten teacher who took over from me. And she's continuing with the kids until today, and I'm back at my regular kindergarten in Mitzvah Ramon. Noam, do you want to add about the other kindergartens that we're involved in?
I'll just say a couple of words. We don't have a lot of time left. So first of all, thank you so much, Daniel, for speaking and sharing your story. We operate a lot of kindergartens, daycares, schools, etc., all over Israel for the evacuees. We used to call them evacuees. I think it's safe to say a lot of them are refugees inside Israel. So we're almost from day one, we're providing this kind of service to a lot of people in need, especially in the communities that got hit the hardest in October 7th. But now it's not just the Gaza envelope people, it's a lot of the northern border kibbutzim and towns that got evacuated. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and we're trying to do it all and address it all. Now the state, over the past week, the state got more involved, as it should, in running, especially the schools, which is amazing. But up until a couple of days ago, it was basically a lot of our work and a lot of Dror Israel members and volunteers that we recruited. And remember, I mean, I think what we try to do different than, there's a lot, like Carmi said, there's a lot of amazing people that want to come for a day and do some sort of activity and then go back home. But I think what these kids need the most is stability and people who will actually, have full responsibility over addressing their needs, assessing the situation, not just coming for a day or two, being there for the long run, even if it means basically relocating yourself for a month or two, or however more it'll take. And that's what we're trying to do. And I think it's an amazing thing that Daniel, you've done, and Carmi has done as well. I sent the link to our website in the chat. Feel free to check us out. And if you have any more questions in the minutes we have left, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you so much. I want to just express my extreme gratitude to Noam, to Daniel, and to Carmi for sharing their stories today. They're such important stories to hear. We have an entire series coming up. Next week, we will have an IDF spokesperson who will be sharing currently what's on the ground. We have a survivor from Kibbutz Be'eri following that, as well as the podcast Israel Story sharing about their wartime diaries, and our partners at JDC will also be sharing this next month. I hope you continue to join us for these important webinars. And again, thank you to our partners in Dror Israel for being here today. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for your support. It means a lot to us, really.